Good evening, everyone. Welcome to New Canaan Library. My name is Heather Semino, and I organize adult programs here. We are very excited to start our partnership with Moneco Advisors as they bring us a series on financial planning, the first of which is tonight and will be financial planning basics. Then there's Cashflow, tax planning, and then a beyond financial basics. So you can go on our website and see and register for those if you wish. So yes, we're talking about financial planning, which is the firm Moneco Partners or Advisors that does this work, and we have Derek Metz and Bill Shafransky here to guide us. So if you just take a minute and silence your cell phones, that would be great. Oh, and I forgot something. These gentlemen are based in New Canaan, so they're our very own. Right? No?
Thank you. Yeah, no,
Oh,
absolutely.
Good. All right. Thanks.
We are. I appreciate the intro. So I'm Derek Metz. This is Bill.
I'm Bill Shafransky.
We are local financial planners. Moneco Advisors is actually located right on Elm Street. So everybody knows where the train station is. You know where Starbucks is on the corner. Catty corner to Starbucks, there's a Citibank building. You know what I'm talking about? We have the second floor. That's Moneco Advisors. So we're local. Normally I would have walked here, but not in this snow. I didn't want to conquer the drifts, so I drove. But not only do we work in town, I live here in town. So I live in the Silver Mine region. Have two kids here at Sachs Middle School. They're 13 and 11 in 8th and 6th grade. So I'm local to town. And Bill?
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet. So I'm also local to town too. I'm over in Norwalk, right across the town border there, town line. 2-year-old daughter at home, just turned 2 last month, and it's a great age. Married to my beautiful wife, Hillary. Been doing this now as an advisor for 8 years now. Before that, I was in a different industry for about a decade in operations, so carried that into advising. And I'll just end with we love what we do.
So thank you, Bill. So I'm going to kick us off. If you want to go to the next slide, this is the first episode, if you will, in a series of 4 presentations that we're doing in partnership with the New Canaan Library. I'm not saying it's only 4. We might do more in the future, but for now, what we're going to do is present really on these 4 topics. We have financial planning basics. That's today. So we're going to go intro-level financial planning. Then we're going to switch over and talk a little bit about tax planning the day before tax day. So you can get out of here and go mail your tax forms right away on the 15th. No, he's okay. Yeah, you'll get it ahead of the 15th. Good. But nonetheless, we're going to talk about tax planning, tax strategies right around tax time. That'll be good. We're going to go back and we're going to do some more financial planning beyond the basics. So if you imagine today is like a 101 level course, that's like our 201 course. And then after that, we're going to talk a little bit about cash flow basics as well and cash flow planning. So that's kind of the setup. Now that being said, financial planning basics, we can cover anything today. So if you have a question about the markets, you have a question about insurance, you have a question about really anything financial planning, we can cover that. So as we go through, we're going to be presenting most of the slides, but if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand. We'll get to your questions and make sure we can answer them. So our agenda for today. So our goals for today specifically, I want to make sure you understand what financial planning is, right? So financial planning at its core is a process. So we want to talk about that today. What does that planning process look like for each of you? We also want to talk about the main areas of financial planning. I like to say there are 6. The slide will say that there are 7, but the main areas you should be looking at when we talk about wealth management or financial planning, right? We're going to talk a little bit about the life stages of financial planning, which I kind of enjoy. Remember when you're in your 20s, probably a little bit different life than when you were in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. So we're going to talk about that. What are some of the important things to learn in every decade of life and some of the things you should be thinking of from a planning aspect, right? We're going to talk a little bit about SMART planning goals. Anybody know the SMART acronym? Okay, I've heard many different definitions, but specific, measurable, actionable, reasonable, and time-bound. If you do that acronym, it works out too. SMART. So we're going to talk about that. What's a SMART financial planning goal look like? And then we're going to talk about how you actually track your progress over time, over a lifetime. All right? So this is the topics for today. Basics. We're not going to go anything crazy, but again, if you have a crazy question, I always love the curveball ones, so throw us a curveball, happy to answer it.
So what is financial planning? So we can read the definition on the slide right here, but I'm curious. What are your thoughts? What is financial planning? Shout it out. What does it mean to you? Retirement. What else?
Managing what you have and living out your life so you can do what you want to do, and then maybe leaving some to family members the best way. And how to do that in the best way.
Yep,
right?
exactly. Good. Yep. What else? So it's a process. It's a process of setting financial goals, identifying the situation, modeling the potential outcomes, and it's getting what your financial roadmap looks like so that you can stay on course. When the market zags, you can zig or zag, how the phrase goes. But it's getting a right roadmap for you so that you can achieve all your goals, both short, mid, and long. Retire comfortably. Ensure you don't run out of money. Know that if the market were to take a downturn, you're going to be okay. You know, maybe it's going to be relocating in the future of some sort. Making decisions like if the Fed does lower interest rates and continues to do so, which as of today, they're going to hold course. But do I refinance my house for a lower rate? Just as one of many examples. But it's getting a process together to make informed decisions based upon your specific data as opposed to shooting from the hip. But you're all right. Different answers, but everyone defines it different. And that's what's unique about financial planning, is it's not one size fits all. It's not, this is how you do it, period, right? You can get creative and customize everything, and it's tailored to you. I want to retire comfortably. I want to retire comfortably and buy a home in Florida as a place to go in the wintertime when it's too cold. I want to do X, Y, and Z, but it's building that financial roadmap so you can ensure that everything comes to fruition when, again, life comes at you. What's interesting about this slide right here, this is data from a couple years ago, but I did look it up and it still holds true. Everyone thinks of finances differently. And we have a lot of clients spanning all different ages. What's interesting is when you look at all the concerns people have and they bring us, you can really boil it down to just one specific concern. I want to be okay. That's it. People want to know they're going to be okay. And so by building a roadmap to retirement, that's how you achieve your goals. So let's dive in a little bit now about the process of how to build that roadmap. What does it look like?
So if you take a look, the financial planning process as we define it, and again, there's other definitions out there, but they're all congruent. It's really 4 steps, right? Discover. So that step to us is understanding what your current finances look like, i.e., okay, how much do I have in the different accounts, right? What type of accounts do I have? Do I know if I have an after-tax 401k or a not after-tax 401k? Yes, that's part of Discover. That being said, it's also sitting down as a family unit and really trying to understand what's unique and important to you, right? Everybody has a different philosophy around money, and working with clients, you know, I've seen clients, I'll give you an example. There's one client in particular who is really, really afraid that if they left money to their kids, that their kids or grandkids specifically would feel entitled. And they wanted to make sure that that didn't happen. And so that was one of their main goals, right? So that comes out through the discovery process. And that's just trying to be honest and have honest conversations, understanding not only where the money is, but philosophically, what's important to you and your family, because that is different, right? Second step, modeling. This is my fun one. I'm a nerd at heart. I love this stuff. I know some of you know I love this stuff. So I love modeling it out. And that's basically taking a look at what the numbers say today, based on what you're doing. What does it look like in the future, right? And I like using charts because I'm a visual learner. Yes, I can look at Excel tables, but that's not the crux of it. I want to just say, what does it look like if I continue saving my 401k, if I retired at age 68 versus 70, if I retired at age 55, if I bought a house in Florida, if I want to model out all those possibilities. Does this make sense? We got some yeses? Okay, that's modeling. Next one, strategy. We can model till we're blue in the face. You know, what if I bought a ski house in Vail? What if I bought 5 ski houses? This is great. But what's the strategy? Where the rubber meets the road, that's strategy. What do we do now that we've looked at all these what if scenarios and the modeling and understood that, yes, this is my projected tax liability. But what do we do about this? That's strategize, right? And then the fourth one, and this is perhaps the most important that people forget, navigate. So for us, that means coming back to this regularly. So if you spend a lot of time doing an awesome financial plan and you print it off, I mean, this is what you used to do. I've been in the business 24 years. So 24 years ago, we used to do this. We'd print it off, we'd put it in this binder, and then hand it to a client, and then they'd put it on their bookshelf. And how many times did they actually look at it? Nil. Well, you might have because you're here. But other than, right, nobody really looks at it. This is probably the most important thing. I'm a big believer in looking at live modeling at least once a year. Just to update how do things look, what's changed, kind of go through this process and make sure that you're navigating the changes. Does anybody here know exactly who their contingent executor is named in their will? Does anybody know who that is? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. That's not bad. For those who don't, there might be an opportunity to navigate. How about the contingent person on their healthcare directive? Okay, we have 4. Good. So you are way ahead of the average American, which makes sense given where we are, right? But nonetheless, these are important things that we always want to take regular looks at. That's navigate, right? Make sense?
Fire it off. Go, Derek. This one. Kick us off.
Sure. So cash flow planning, this is a big one. The first area that we always want to take a look at, and actually, do you want to go to the slide where we have the 7 areas? You want to fast forward? That's at the very back, the index.
Is it in there?
Yeah, it's in the index, just to show it. So the first thing I always take a look at is cash flow planning with any client. So cash flow is understanding how much money comes in and how much money goes out. Does anybody here have a good tool that they like to use for cash flow and managing cash flow? Understanding how much money you make, how much comes in, how much goes out? No? An Excel spreadsheet? Man after my own heart. You and I would get along. Okay. Yeah, that's true. So, yeah, and I like this slide because this lays it all out. So these are the 7 areas that I like to mention. I know the slide said 6 earlier, but I split out tax and estate into 2. The first is cash flow planning. So for me, it's understanding just what the cash flow looks like. It's making decisions on when should you take Social Security. Should you delay it till 70? Should you not? And then if you're not, where are you going to pull that extra income for those amount of years? And then how does that impact your retirement planning? Or if you retire before 65, what's the biggest expense if you retire before 65 that most people don't think about? Health insurance, nailed it. Health insurance, especially if you have kids at home, for a family of 4, can be very, very expensive before Medicare. So you want to make sure that if you're going to retire before Medicare age, we're looking at the cash flow. So that's what cash flow is. We use a tool, we use a financial planning tool, eMoney. By the way, if anybody wants access to it, I'm happy to give you access to it where you can actually log in, create a portal for yourself. P.S. We pay for this tool. We do not sell data or anything else like that, right? But nonetheless, if you contact us, we'll give you access to it. You can link all of your credit cards, your bank accounts, your investment accounts, and it tracks your cash flow for you. Sometimes you don't want to see it, but if I know how much I'm spending on a monthly basis, yeah, it could be good or bad, but information is power. So that's when we talk about cash flow, that's what we're talking about. Budgeting, yes, we're not big on telling you how much you can and can't spend, right? I don't want to be that person that somebody's like sitting in Starbucks saying, I don't know if I can spend this, Derek's not going to like it. That's not us. But I think it's really important to give you the tools so that way you know what's there and then we can plan around it, right? And then it's also harnessing the ability to use that cash flow to automatically save into different places. There's another slide. I'm sorry, Bill, I'm killing you right now. Go back to that one that shows investing real quick. This one. I like this slide. So what I'm looking at here, and this is the power of cash flow, and I'm looking at our younger contingent in the crowd right now. So this is the power of cash flow. This is 4 different people that invested, okay? We have consistent Chloe, invest between ages of 25 to 65 and earn 6% a year, okay? Invest $5,000 a year between ages 25 to 65. So consistent Chloe, she saved $200,000 total, 6% return. Congratulations, she started at 25. She's the top one. Ending portfolio value, can you see it? What is it? 820 grand. Got it? Betsy, I can send you the slide too. All right, late Lila. Late Lila didn't start until she was the ripe old age of 35. Still seems very young to most people. Seems young to me. Late Lila does 35 to 65, earning 6%, so she saved $150,000 total. How much does late Lila have? $419,000. 820 to just under 420, just by delaying from age 25 to 35. Let's look at Quitter Quincy. Quitter Quincy, I love this term too, by the way. Quitter Quincy only saved $5,000 a year between the ages of 25 and 35. How much does Quitter Quincy have? $401,000, almost as much as late Lila. So late Lila did it from 35 to 65. Quitter Quincy just did it for the first 10 years, and they have about the same amount of money. Crazy, right? And then Nervous Noah. Nervous Noah saves 25 to 65. Nervous Noah does not invest in the market at all, puts it in cash accounts. They earn 2% a year in this example. Nervous Noah, even though did a really good job, saved from 25 to 65, ends up with the least, 308 grand. So why do I go through this? This is where we start in financial planning, is cash flow. Cash flow planning is important. Systematic savings is important. Getting into the habit of it is important. And starting as early as possible, very important. So you're 25, so you have some time. Yeah, exactly. Bill.
Yeah, market timing never worked out, but time in the market is where it's at. Let's go back a couple slides. All right. Insurance, necessary evil. So this is a tough slide to go over because we don't like insurance, quite frankly. But where it's a fit, it's important to have. So to define what insurance is, it's a transfer of risk. There are times where insurance is very important. What kind of insurance? Health insurance, very important to have. Homeowners insurance, very important to have. Maybe long-term care insurance could be important to have, maybe. Life insurance, you catch the drift. But the whole purpose behind insurance is figuring out if you truly actually need it. So there's the want aspect, then there's the need aspect. A lot of times we'll meet clients who are, middle-aged or later in life, and they have a lot of insurance, but they also have a fair amount of savings as well. And it's the fear that something were to happen to them, they want to leave their family, well taken care of or income replaced and whatnot. So the idea of having the insurance from years ago, the logic makes sense, but because they've accumulated so much money over time and saved up, the need for insurance has gone down. So we're big proponents of, yes, cover what you need, have the right kinds of insurance, transfer the risk to the insurance company, but only carry it if you actually need it. One of the things that we'll look at too with clients is life insurance. There's a whole market out there of different kinds of life insurance policies. I'm not going to detail on that too specifically, but permanent policies and then temporary policies called term insurance. And again, there's no one size that fits all, but it's figuring out what you actually truly need. Term insurance will be the most cost-efficient form of insurance, while permanent policies will typically come with a higher premium. Now, there's cash value and whatnot, and that's a whole different conversation. But it keeps going back to just figuring out what you actually truly need to cover, and if you actually need to carry it moving forward, because you might not anymore. Other ends of the spectrum too, disability insurance, covering your income if you're still gainfully employed. If you were to go out on disability, typically what happens for group benefits, and every company's different, but oftentimes the base case is your group disability insurance will have a certain percentage covered of your income. Let's say it's 60%, which means that if you were out on disability claim, you went on group long-term disability, they will pay you 60% in this example of your income. Here's the catch that people often overlook. that benefit most times is taxable. So now when you look at your net income on the disability claim, it's actually less than that 60%. So we say, okay, well, we encourage you now to look at your cash flow, right? Which is why it's so important to hit cash flow in the first step to figure out how the money's working right now. Because if you got a less than 60% income on disability, well, that could make things quite difficult for some time. And I won't go to every single bullet right here, but touching on one more for, I would say, P&C insurance. This is often overlooked too. Property and casualty insurance. Let's say homeowners insurance. We don't do homeowners insurance. We have a couple individuals here in town who also do a good job in this area, but it's making sure at least once a year you look at your homeowners policy. Rates change a lot for homeowners policies, even auto policies too. So as the rates change year over year, sometimes what people find themselves is they're overpaying for coverage. They can just change to a different carrier and save a few bucks.
Has anybody redone their homeowners or property and casualty insurance in the last 5 years? Good. I see some hands last 3 years. Good. No? Okay. Something to take a look at. Again, we don't do this directly. There's some actually really good people here in town. So if you want a referral, there are really good people here in town that can help you with that. But just taking a look at it is very interesting. What I found after years of this, I feel like their pricing model is to slowly increase the insurance every single year because it's just easy for you to pay the bill. And then if you all of a sudden pick your head up 5 years later and then you look at going from Chubb to Pure or whatever you're going to do, similar coverage, all of a sudden it's a lot less. These are little things to take a look at, right? And also make sure that you have the right coverage as well. Because God forbid something happens, especially to a home in this area, and you have something very unique in your home. For instance, I have an antique home. We have antique beams in there. I love the antiqueness of it. If my home were to burn down, I want antique beams to go back in, right? Because I think that would be a like-for-like replacement. So you got to make sure that these things are there, which is also, by the way, code for nothing in my house is square. So, it comes with good and bad, but nonetheless, little things like that, really important for you to take a look at.
Investments. Let's go to this one over here. So before Derek pulled up the slide about when you begin saving makes all the difference in the world. And of course, intuitively, the more you put away in investments, your investment strategy will have a major impact at how much money you have at retirement or at a certain point in life. But your investment asset allocation also will play a major role in what that could look like over time. So this is Vanguard data right here. And from the left side of the screen over here, it's 100% bonds versus 100% stocks on the far side, and then 50-50 right in the middle. And what you're looking at right here, this eye test, is the black dots in the middle. That is the average rate of return that you can project for that given asset allocation over time. Hot top numbers in the teal up there, that is the best year on record for that asset allocation versus the bottom, we'll call that yellow, that is the worst year on record for that asset allocation.
Okay, so quiz time. Worst year on record. Anybody have a guess? What did he say it out loud? 1987, Black Monday. You must remember that well. No, actually not 1987, but good guess. Black Monday was not good. Any other guesses? Very close. So the guess was either the 30s or 2008. It was actually the 30s, 1931. So that was the worst year on record. Anybody have a guess what the best year on record is? 1933. Interesting, right? So I love looking at this data, but this is really all about, okay, as you are deciding what strategy is right for you. By the way, no strategy is up here. This is what portfolio returns are. You have to take a look at your needs, come up with a strategy. But as you're implementing that strategy, it's kind of fun to take a look at this, but understand that, there is risk in investing. How much risk can you take and stay the course? Because that's the most important thing. Had you stayed invested or sold it at 1931, right? You're down 43.1%. You invested $1 million. It's now worth 600 grand. Life is not good. It's actually less than 600 grand, 570. You're upset. You sold. What happened? You missed that 54% up. So it's really important when we talk about investing is to understand risks, what rate of return you're going to expect, and then the price you have to pay is what we call volatility in the market, which, by the way, I love volatility. Volatility is up and down, but does anybody use the term volatility for the market when they're seeing up? No, they always talk about down markets as being volatile markets, right? But there is volatility up too. So anyways.
Yeah, it's all good stuff. So to take this one step further at some of the mistakes that we often find when people come to us for the first time is, and this could work out for some individuals, but oftentimes when preparing for retirement is where we see it the most, is everybody has their investments typically in one asset allocation. And that's okay to a point. But to Derek's point earlier, if you're going to be preparing for retirement, or maybe you're a little bit more apprehensive of the market, and you're invested solely in, let's just say, an 80-20 allocation, well, the worst year on record is down 35%. How would you feel if all of your money investments was down 35% right before a major transition in your life? That could be gut-wrenching. So it's okay to kind of have different asset allocations across your portfolio. So one concept we can give is have the majority of your money in a more aggressive long-term asset allocation, a longer and more aggressively invested portfolio, but have a little bit of money in a more conservative asset allocation, let's say a 20% equity portfolio, 80% bonds. And depending on where you are in life, that could be 6 months worth of your expenses. That could be 5 years of your expenses. But that's your sleep at night money. So let your longer investments grow over time, and the shorter, more conservative investments be your sleep at night money. So if the market were to take a downturn, and I promise it's going to happen, just don't know when, but it will go down again with a correction at some point in the future. When that happens, you know that you have a little bit of money safely invested, which will still lose value, but not nearly as much as a longer investment.
So what Bill's talking about right now is addressing something called sequence of return risk. Anybody heard of sequence of return risk before? Okay, so if you read financial planning journals, we talk about this kind of stuff a lot. Sequence of return risk is the risk of you just happen to retire on the wrong day. The first 3 years of retirement are critical. And you can take a look at historical studies on this, and I could show you graphs if you want. Hit me up and we can talk about this. But if you happen to retire at the wrong time and the market goes down in the first 3 years, you're going to have a very different retirement than if you happen to retire at the right time and you caught a bull market and the market explodes for the first 3 years. You can intuitively understand this, right? It's called sequence of return risk. Well, you can't time the market, so what is the strategy? There's actually a slide on this. Go forward to the retirement. Here you go. So here's the strategy. This is a bucketing strategy. It's not the only one out there, but this is one that's very popular. The idea being, historically, people have their long-term portfolio here. They have their money in the bank here, right? Long-term portfolio, money in the bank. When the portfolio goes down, I don't know, pick a number, 30%, 20%, whatever you picked. When it goes down that much, what do you do to fill up that cash account? Well, if the market's down 30%, do you just spend 30% less money? Maybe if you have a lot, you can. That's a strategy. Hey, I have a lot of money. I'll just spend less this year. That works, actually. But if that's not your strategy, okay, well, what do you do? Some people say, well, that's fine. I'm older now. I need to take less risk in retirement. So I'm just going to put it all in bonds. Well, that might have worked in 1982 when bonds were paying what? Anybody remember what bonds were paying in the 80s? High. Mortgages were high, double digits, right? That worked back in the 80s and 90s. Where interest rates are today, does that work? No. And not only that, what's the number one thing that eats away at purchasing power throughout retirement? Inflation. Is inflation high or low in the last 10 years? High, right? And this is a big worry. Inflation eats into it. So you can't just all of a sudden say, I'm going to be very conservative here, because now it's like, well, I surrender. I shouldn't say you can't be. Maybe you can. If you have a gazillion dollars and you spend like $4 a week, you could probably live off of that, no problem. But for those of us that are saying, I want to make sure I live my current lifestyle, and I don't have a gazillion dollars, I have enough, how do I make it work? You still want some long-term portfolio there, because that's the engine that's going to drive your retirement. But you also have to have that sleep at night money for when the market tanks. It's not if, it's when. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. The market will tank at some point. When that tanks, now all of a sudden, if you set up a short-term and mid-term portfolio, short-term being cash in the bank, I think you said a year or so of expenses, something like that, maybe 6 months. You have something there in the bank. Then you have this mid-term portfolio. And this is an idea that's a very conservative portfolio. He mentioned 20/80 as a target asset allocation. I don't think we need to get that detailed. We can just say it's sleep at night money. And maybe you have a 5-year buffer there. Maybe it's 6 years, maybe it's 4 years. We can talk about that with clients and talk about what's important to them. But the idea would be when the market tanks, you can spend this money down, and that's still your engine that you can leave for the long term. So that's an example of a strategy on how to implement these investments. Now, go back a slide. Midterm, I look at single-digit loss. That's what I define as a midterm bucket. So in the worst year, it should be down 10%. Actually, I'm kind of annoyed about the year 2022. Anybody remember 2022? Was it a good year or a bad year in the markets? Bad year in the markets. One of the things that was really bad, both stocks and bonds did poorly. So up until 2022, this number that was a 20/80, right, instead of minus 14.4% was actually minus 10.1%. That was the worst year on record. Now 2022 is officially the worst year on record. So the good news is if you were shorter on the yield curve and you had your portfolio set up correctly, you did not have a double-digit loss. But the idea is it still goes up and down a little bit, but not as much. Okay, I feel like I've gone into the weeds a little bit too much, so I'm going to back up and we're going to go higher level. Do you understand the bucketing concept, though? Having a smart place to go to no matter what the market is? That's all that is. Always have a smart place to go to.
So goal planning. Goal planning is important because, well, let's back up. Think of a goal you have. Maybe it's retirement in 10 years, 5 years, 2 years. Maybe it's spending the tuition money for your son or daughter's college that's coming up. Right? How do you know if you're on track? That's the question that clients will bring to us. How do I know if I'm on track or not? Because when you think about how much tuition is today, where it was 5 years ago, vastly different numbers, let alone 5, 10, 15, 20 years in the future. You got to run the rate of return of your investments, what their projections are for the tuition over time. There's now changes coming down the pike starting July 1st of this year with how student loans are being awarded to new college students, which is now factored in. And so we're in the modeling phase of the financial plan. We know our cash flow, we know our insurance, everything's protected in the protection side. We have our investments lined up. Retirement is on the horizon down the road at some point. But we have this goal in front of us now. And how do you know if you're on track? And so the modeling side of things, you can really get down to granular detail to know definitively, are you on the right track? And more specifically, if you're not, how do you shorten that gap to course correct to save enough in the right areas so that you are? When in college is a unique one because what you don't want to do is oversave for college. Now, I don't want to get too granular in details, but a couple of years ago, the Secure Act 2.0 passed where it said that if you have any overage money in 529 plans, then there's a couple rules that have to be checked, but essentially you can roll over some of that money over to a Roth IRA for that child of yours. Great, but there's also a lot of rules behind it, and you're capped at $35,000. So if you're oversaved, say in 529 plans for college, and you have money left over, what's the plan at that point? So this is a good way, in retirement, it's the same concept of buying a house, good way to kind of gauge to ensure that you're making the efficient strides moving forward, saving enough in the right areas, using the right investment vehicles, being tax efficient, but just really getting a good handle as to, where am I right now related to reaching this goal and reaching it on time.
So I promise this is financial planning basics. Who here knows what a 529 plan is? Cool. So you're ahead of the game. 529 plan is just a section in the IRS tax code that allows you to save for college or other qualified educational expenses, and then you don't pay taxes on the growth. So that's a good thing. If you invest, we go back to our example where somebody invested 200 grand and then she had like 400 grand. Normally you'd have to pay taxes on that $200,000 of growth. If it was in a 529 and used for qualifying educational expenses, no tax. Make sense? One other note I'll put on this. Saving for college is actually one of the toughest things to save for. Why? I love putting this up there. This is Bucknell. This is my alma mater, so I have to advertise it. I loved going to school there. It was great. But I have no idea if my kids go to school there, how much it would cost. I have no idea. Now, why do I say that? I could look it up. As a matter of fact, if you take a look, it looks like I have an idea. It's published right here. Here's a tip for you. Anybody that's doing any college planning, go to U.S. News and World Report. You can do this online. You don't have to sign up for their stuff. You can look up any university, including Bucknell, and what you're going to see is a published tuition rate. Then if you scroll down, so you're on the page, scroll down, it'll actually say what the average student pays. Bucknell's something like $73,000 a year, something crazy, and then the average student pays, I think, $48,000. You're like, wait a second, what's the difference here? Then you can click on See More Financial Details, and it actually says per income bracket what the average student pays. So the reality is, it's almost like buying a car. Colleges, they have an MSRP, and colleges will offer different financial aid and different prices, essentially, for that college, depending on how badly they want your student. So it's a really tough thing for us to do as financial planners because, whoa, if I plan for 73 grand a year and it's only 48, good for me, but now it's stuck in a 529 plan, I have to pay a penalty, a 10% penalty, plus the taxes to get it out. Is it the end of the world? No. Is this a good thing for us? Yeah, but at the same time, you don't want to put too much money there. Yes? The Trump accounts, yes. Yes. Funding a Trump account yourself for a child, yes. So this is a Trump account question. Do you want to handle this or do you want me to? I will handle it. So Trump accounts, without going too much in detail, I'm happy to talk to you, anybody about this in detail offline. The overarching thing with Trump accounts is we like having a place to save for kids early. However, when they attain certain ages and control the assets, that makes us a little bit worried. Also, I think that there might be some more tax advantage ways of doing it better. So I'm not saying that we're for or against Trump accounts in general. They're just not the first place we usually go to for financial planning. That being said, we actually have a member on our team who's not here tonight. Henry is the expert in Trump accounts, and he loves talking about that stuff. So if you want to talk more about it, hit us up and we will. Yeah, in general, it's not the first place that we look, but I'm not saying that they're bad.
Yeah, and I think it could be a good way just for a seed money. So the government will give you $1,000 for a newborn child in the account, which just has a investment rate of return over time. So it could turn into some money in the future, and that's free money. And then you can contribute up to, I think it's $3,000 or $4,000 per year, every year moving forward. And there's some rules behind it, but it's still so new. It not even rolled out yet officially. So more to come on that, but could it be a good tool? Potentially, but to Derek's point, there are some more efficient ways to save, as things stand today.
For people that have assets that want to gift them to kids, I like other things better. But, free money from the government, I get that.
quote unquote free.
Yeah, we're not talking about that. No, go next.
Oh, tax planning. So I love this slide. So this right here is a good depiction of how taxes work in a most simplistic way possible, because I think taxes can get really complex. And again, basics 101 today, so I'm not going to get too much in the weeds. But this is a good slide to understand, because if you can understand how your money is taxed, you can use the system legally to your advantage, knowing how to save. So I won't go through every bullet point, but just your taxable accounts. Most people don't realize that checking savings in the bank is in the taxable account bucket. Why? Well, if you made money in interest or dividends throughout the year, you didn't pay taxes on that money, right? So yes, you get your paycheck, you put it in the bank, but all the interest, you need to pay taxes on that every single year. Taxable investment accounts, same concept. But tax deferred is where our 401ks live. Tax exempt, where Roth IRAs live. But knowing all this, you can begin to finagle your finances in a way to use things to your advantage. What do I mean by that? Well, if you are earning a certain amount of money where you're right over the federal tax bracket, maybe it makes sense to increase your 401k contribution pre-tax. Why? Because you're deferring the taxability of that income to a later date, such as distribution or retirement. But what that does is it brings your income down, potentially, underneath that federal tax bracket, saving you money. So it's a little bit of tax arbitrage in a way. And then fast forward to retirement, you can do things like Roth conversions. So maybe some people are saving too much money in 401ks right now and taking that tax deduction today. But what we find sometimes in modeling is there'll be some new individuals who we meet, some new clients we meet, and they're very top heavy in pre-tax plans. They've saved older money in 401ks, which could be the right move, but all of a sudden, because they're in retirement, because of required minimum distributions, their tax actually increases year over year over year over year. And they're in a higher tax environment in retirement than they are during their working years. So you could do things like Roth conversions when you're in retirement, if you're in a lower tax bracket, which typically happens for most people because you're no longer working. So your income brackets drop for a while, and you can prepay some taxes in those lower tax environment years and smooth out some of those higher taxes over time.
So I'm going to make this real simple. You need to take a look at your tax brackets and do some tax planning to say what type of investments and when should you pay taxes and how to smooth it out. And another disclosure before I get to your question, if we're going to do Roth conversions, you have to consider things like IRMA limits and other hidden taxes that a lot of people don't think about, because if you hit an IRMA limit, then you're going to have a chargeback, especially for Medicare. So there are things to look at for it, but this is a great slide because tax planning, that's real dollars. We call it tax alpha in our business, right? Yes? Where would the 529s? Top. 529s go up top. You pay tax on the money, you take home the paycheck, you pay your taxes, 10 grand, whatever it is, you put it in a 529, that 10,000 grows to 20, you take out 20 grand, you pay no taxes. No, you pay taxes on the way in because you earn the money, you pay your paycheck, you don't get a write-off this year for putting money in, except for, I should say, asterisk, in Connecticut, up to $10,000 per married couple, $5,000 individually, you get to write off your state income taxes, so it would save you what, $600 or so. So again, important to pay attention to. Yes, another question. Backdoor Roths. I love backdoor Roths, especially mega backdoor Roths for the 401k. I have a feeling that you, sir, need to be in our 201 class, because if you're asking about backdoor Roths, I love it. Okay, you're in the 201 class. Absolutely love mega backdoor Roths. Just from a point of time, I think we're going to keep going. If you want to talk afterwards, though, I love them in general.
This is you, Derek. You love estate.
Okay, so estate planning, this is the last slide before we go into the life stages, which I think we're going to go through fairly quickly, and then we'll wrap it up with more questions. So estate planning is the process of gifting money from one generation to the other. Does it have to happen when you die? No. That was a leading question. Thank you. No. You can do this when you're alive. It actually is a lot easier to do a lot of these things when you're alive, right? But estate planning is the proper disposition of assets and responsibilities between generations. And it is a process much like financial planning. Now, the thing we put up there, we put up the will, irrevocable trust, gift planning, estate planning. I'm sorry, Bill, go to the appendix again. In the appendix, there's a really good slide. I'm killing you. There you go. This is the slide that I want to go over for when I talk about estate planning. There's two sides. Stuff that goes through probate. What's probate? Who knows? The courts, the probate courts, they get involved. The stuff on the right, non-probatable assets. You don't go through the courts. Which one's easy? Getting the court involved or not? We don't? Okay. Avoiding going through the court system. I know it makes a lot of sense. If you don't go through the court system, it's a lot easier. So all the stuff on the right-hand side avoids probate. So this is why a lot of people will do trust planning. I'm a big fan of doing what are called TOD accounts, transfer on death accounts. You can have named beneficiaries. P.S. If you have a named beneficiary and then your will says something different, which takes precedent, a will or a named beneficiary? I think the named beneficiary. You think the will? Any other people weighing in? No, nobody wants to say anything. I get it. It's the named beneficiary. The beneficiary takes precedent over the will. So I will give you an example, and we just had this. Unfortunately, somebody passed away recently in our practice that we were dealing with, and she had named one of her kids as a beneficiary, but her will said something different. Guess what ended up happening? The one kid got it. You got it. That's exactly right. So be very, very careful with your beneficiaries. I have a lot of experience working on this, and this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. So if again, this is the basics. The very basic thing you need to understand is certain things go through probate for estate planning, certain things don't. I'm going to leave it at that. We can talk irrevocable trust and revocable trust and the $30 million exemption and all sorts of fun things later. Yes? Yep. The question is, do I see a financial planner first or a lawyer first for this kind of stuff? The answer is whichever is right for you. Some people have a good financial planner that understands estate planning. I would recommend starting there because then they know your situation. I like that better. I mean, I'm biased, obviously, because I'm a planner, but I like that better because then you understand, okay, where are all the assets, right? How many accounts do you have all over the place? And how, what are the family dynamics? And, well, I know you're going to be doing Roth conversions, so I have to worry about this eventual Roth. Well, that Roth could be a good legacy product because then that could be tax-free inheritance for kids, right? So knowing the bigger picture can help with a lot of the estate planning, but you just want to make sure that the financial planner knows estate planning. That being said, at some point, you definitely want an attorney to get involved to draft documents because then they know state-specific regulations. So I'm biased, but I would say financial planner first that knows estate planning. But that being said, if you already have a good relationship with an estate planning attorney and they know your situation and you don't have one with a financial planner, I don't think there's anything wrong going to the estate planning attorney first either. I will say, oftentimes, I know this is going to be a surprise to a lot of you, a lot of people will go to an estate planning attorney, pay a bunch of money, go through, get an excellent estate plan. They have all the documents, and then they just sit there. Nobody retitles assets. Nobody moves anything into trust. All the documents are beautiful, but they weren't ever implemented. I see this a lot. That would be a financial planner would help you with that. Or you, if you're doing your own financial planning. You can do it yourself. There's no secrets up here. All the stuff that we do for clients, you can do for yourself.
Let's go through the life stages. We'll go pretty quick.
Yeah, let's go pretty quick because we only have 10 minutes left.
All right. So 20s and 30s, what should you be focusing on? You have one. So the biggest thing is getting your cash flow understood, starting to save. Timing the market never has worked out. I don't think it ever will work out, but time in the market is going to be on your side. The faster you can get money in the market saving, as you saw a couple slides ago, that will benefit you long term considerably. Making sure that you're saving in the right areas, taking advantage of workplace plans. If you have an employer match in your 401k, opt into that. 30s and 40s. This is a big one. I think one of the biggest things for 30s and 40s is daycare planning. Daycare planning is huge. We have 529 plans and covered L's for college accounts, but no one's cracked the case yet for daycare planning. And daycare planning, in it right now, really has a major dent on cash flow. It's expensive. So it's finding the balance of making sure you can address things like these higher expenses while still saving for retirement without having too much of a sacrifice to lifestyle along the way. And there will be some considerations, but it's finding that balance over time of how to make everything work in the plan, still moving down the road in the right direction. Right there, sir?
Sure. So 50s and 60s, these traditionally are your max income years. So maximum income years. The biggest thing is make sure it's also not your maximum expenses years. This is the big thing. Anybody hear the term lifestyle creep? Yeah, we're smiling. We know lifestyle creep. We're in New Canaan. We know about this. People know how to spend money. So in your 50s and 60s, when the income goes up and kids potentially leave the house or not, your income is high, you have to make sure that you watch the expenses. That is the number one piece of advice I have. This should be when you start squirreling away more money. There's a rule change actually for for 401k contribution catch-ups. And we got some smiles and nods. Now people know that their $8,000 a year catch-up is going to go into a Roth portion as opposed to a traditional. Not necessarily bad. The government wants their money sooner, I get it, but not necessarily a bad thing. But nonetheless, we encourage things like this. In our 50s and 60s, we really, really, really want to make sure we can maximum fund savings because it's really a dual effect. One, you're saving more. This is good. Two, you're used to a lifestyle that's going to be more sustainable in retirement. If you're used to spending, whatever it is, 40 grand a month versus 20 grand a month or 10 grand a month or whatever your number is, if it's smaller, it's going to be more sustainable and easier to ease into retirement. Okay? So that's 50s and 60s. 60s and 70s, this is retirement. This is supposedly your max net worth. Not always is it around here. Certainly inflation adjusted it usually is. But nonetheless, this is where you start to focus on travel. We hear a lot about homes. So I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody that comes and says, hey, I'm not going to live in my home forever. I'm going to downsize. Great. What does that look like? I can tell you stories of people that, I'll tell you one, went to South Carolina, bought a house in South Carolina. Turns out they were very happy, not the right house. So they sold the house a year later. They're going to build a house. So they built a house in the perfect neighborhood. Turns out, nope, that wasn't right either. And then they transacted again, 3 transactions in the period of 5 years. Do you think that was helpful to their financial situation? Probably not. I mean, it's a rising market, so at least there's that. And by the way, did the house get cheaper or more expensive every time? We all know the answer. It got more expensive, right? So these are the types of things you need to be talking about: downsizing the home, travel, and then passing on financial habits to the next generation. This is a big focus for a lot of people that we talk to. Next.
And then 80s plus is really about just living life how you want, right? It's the grandkids, it's maybe some travel, not nearly as much, but this is typically the age group that starts to experience some more health concerns, right? And now it becomes a question of aging in a facility, aging in place in your home, but this is where expenses begin to tick back up. I'm a big proponent of talking in the cash flow stage with clients about what's called the retirement spending smile, where what ends up happening is when you enter retirement, your expenses actually go up because you're enjoying life, you're traveling, you're experiencing new things, you want to go out and live your life. But after the shiny new toy kind of fades a little bit, you're in your 70s now, travel isn't as frequent, you're not going to go out to dinner as much, expenses begin to tick back down. But right about here, they begin to go back up for 2 reasons. One is healthcare. Healthcare is one of the number 1 expenses for individuals in retirement. Number 2 is housing. The roof needs to be repaired. the hot water heater breaks, the HVAC system goes. You spent so much time in your house that now repairs become more frequent. So when you're getting hit from a couple different angles of having these home repairs with maybe potentially some healthcare issues, you don't have long-term care insurance or enough to self-insure. Even if you do, you're still spending a lot of money, which can sometimes sacrifice any desired monies left to any intended beneficiaries upon your passing.
People spend a lot of money on their houses in their 40s and 50s to redo them. And then you just do the math. 30 years later, stuff breaks. Okay, I'm going to take this one. This is the last slide I really want to go over, and this is just creating goals. So I mentioned it before. You got specific, measurable, actionable, reasonable, and time-bound. When doing financial planning, very important that you set some goals. If you aim at nothing, you hit nothing, right? We've heard this. So writing down goals is obviously something that's going to help. But then also coming up with a financial plan, it's hard for me as a planner when I hear a client that's like, I don't know, I just want to do stuff. I'm like, great, well, what do you want to do? I don't know. Well, that's hard to plan on, right? You got to give us something. And so I think thinking about this stuff and setting goals for yourself can be really important. Do they have to be perfect? No. Does everybody hit all their goals? No. Do your goals change? Of course. But at least that way it gives you a track to run on. So I believe in goal setting. This is something that we do with our clients to try to figure out, okay, what is the goal here? How much money are you looking to spend if it's a spend thing in retirement? Or how big of a house in South Carolina do you want to buy? Let's not buy 3 of them. Let's buy 1, right? That's the kind of stuff. Make sense? Okay, so tracking progress over time. This is something that we can help with the goals, and that's just taking, that navigation stage and saying, okay, if I want to be here, how am I doing? Am I making progress? Am I not? Right? I think that's really good to understand, so that way you can course correct. That way you say, oh, I need to make a change. So financial planning, every financial plan I've ever seen will say, okay, you're on track or you're not on track. Well, the reality is everybody's on track for retirement, for example. It just might not be the retirement you want. Right? So it's important to track the goals to say, okay, where am I tracking? How does this look? Take a peek into the future just to understand that, you might need to make some tweaks today, good or bad, right? So with that being said, go ahead. Thank you. Appreciate your time and having us in here. Like I said, we're a local business. We're owned by local people. We love helping out local people and educating. So we do this we call it a financial wellness series. We do it with a lot of different organizations. And like I said, we're going to be here for 3 more sessions where we can talk about these topics. But if anybody here has questions or if you want to talk to us, you can send us an email. You can hit us up on LinkedIn or you can call or whatever it is. You can contact us. We're happy to sit down and answer any questions you might have. So happy to talk about your personal situation or whatever it is. So if we want to talk mega backdoor Roths, happy to do so. But let me turn it over to questions. Anybody have any questions that we want to cover that we haven't done in the meantime? Any stumpers? Yes. Equity in the home, yes. Should you tap into the home equity in your home? To help with college tuition or some other thing. The answer, I don't want to just say yes or no because it really depends. One of the things I will say is equity in the home is undervalued. A lot of people don't understand that is true equity and something that you can use to leverage to hit other financial goals. But you do want to be careful, right? Why do you want to be careful? It can go down. Equity can go down, right? That's one thing. Another thing is if you're going to take a home equity loan, for example, are interest rates higher or lower than they were a few years ago? Higher. Right, much higher. And they're variable. So that can, and maybe there's a better place to go to first, right? Maybe you could tap into other assets that are more efficient. So is it the first place I look to for funding grandkids' education? No, it's not. Is it a place that we look to consistently to say, hey, this is something that we might want to look at? Yes, because it definitely has some advantages over other things that I can think of. So very, very specific, very unique to you. Other questions? No? We good? So far, so good. Okay, so this is just the first. We have 3 more in this series. We're happy to have you back for the rest of them. By the way, it's going to be building off of what we talked about today, which is good. However, if you miss an episode, it's okay. You can just come for one. I promise you're not going to be lost. We're not going to be talking about crazy things. So thank you so much. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask us afterwards. Appreciate your time.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.